Hey, good morning to those of you out there in the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started. We're going to do a deep dive into, like 30-minute deep dive into the federal budgets for agencies. And so I'm going to pick one and drive in. I was going to ask if you could do me a favor. For those of you who showed up early and on time, I really appreciate that. I'm curious because I'm having some hiccups on the technology. I'm curious if it's LinkedIn or if it's something else. But for those of you who showed up, especially Devin, Crystal, David, Ernst, right? How did you hear about the training today? Are you one of those people who had it in your calendar and you're just clicking on it and so you know that I'm doing the training? Did LinkedIn remind you? Because I feel like the LinkedIn reminder system just broke on Thursday or Friday and hasn't been back up. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do the training, but I'm just curious. If you can put that into the chat, let me get rid of some of these captions so we can dive in. Usually I start off with a little tip, etc., but I'm going to bypass that because I've got a lot to talk about and I never have enough time when I'm talking on different topics, but in particular on the budget. There's a lot in there. In today's training, I want to teach you how to get value out of federal agency budgets. Too often, we government contractors, we just wait for the RFIs or the sources sought to come out and then we respond, or even sometimes we wait for the RFPs, right? But if you can get engaged earlier, it's so much better. We call that shifting left. And that's really important. And that's where we're going to be talking about the federal agency budgets and how it can help you shift left. There's this great cartoon that's been floating around for decades and decades. And a friend of mine in the chat here and in our community, Jay Madigan, had reminded me of it. And it's a cartoon of a king coming out of his tent. And right next to the tent on the side is a salesperson trying to sell machine guns. And this king has got his sword and he's heading to his army who are all holding their swords. And they're, going to go fight the war. And you can see the king going, I don't have time to talk to a salesperson. I'm off to fight a war. He's off to fight a war with a sword, and there's a machine gun salesperson right there. And so some people see the king as just being clueless. It's like, what are you doing? You should always be trying to find the next best thing that can help you with your mission. But many of us see the challenge is the salesperson got to the king way too late. If they had shifted left, like I'm talking about, then they would have been able to, engage that king long before the war. They would have known about the war, been able to talk about it, et cetera. We'll talk about it. But that's the idea of today's training is understanding how to shift left, how the federal agency budgets can help government contractors shift left. And so I want to teach you how to use federal agency budgets that are out there. Let me share my screen, and I've got slides, and I'm going to go inside of so let me do that. Let me do this. Whoop. We're off to the races. So as we move forward and we're talking about how you can help your customers get value, right? How I help my customers get value from the federal budgets, but it's how you can help your own customers get value from the budget by being able to talk to the budget and come back. And so today I'm going to cover three things in some slides, and then I'm diving right into a couple of agency budgets to be able to show you what I look at when I'm supporting my customers, looking in there and trying to help them pull the best nuggets out of a budget. So the first thing I want to do is just walk down on the budget and look at an agency budget and understand the key parts. And so I'll talk to you about that. I'll show you what I like best. Then I'm going to give you some top tips on how do you search these budgets that are 100 pages, 300 pages, 500 pages, depending on which organization you're going into. So I'm going to give you some top tips on searching. Certainly, these are the very tips that I use myself when I'm searching through agency budgets. And then I'm going to wrap up with just giving you guidance on how you can use an agency's budget as a government contractor when you go into sales meetings with federal agency customers. So when you go in there, you can pull a lot of the information you've learned from an agency budget into your meetings and into the conversations. And so I'll talk about how we can do that there. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. It's why I do this. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to our Government Contracting Success newsletter. We just passed 12,000 subscribers yesterday, which is pretty exciting for us that we're reaching so many people in the government contracting space. I have a lot of followers. I have over 25,000 followers, but those are not the audience I'm really trying to attract. It's these subscribers in the newsletters, because when you subscribe to the newsletter, you're getting notifications about what I think is important and could contribute to your success as a government contractor. So I'll put out org charts with people's names, links over to their LinkedIn connection, maybe names and phone numbers if we're lucky. I'll be putting out opportunities the government is sharing, and a lot of information that speeds up or accelerates your business development activity. So subscribe to the newsletter. And if you're coming to these trainings, please do me a favor and make sure you register for a training. A lot of you register for training. On average, we get about 100 people registering for each training. And then sometimes more than that even coming to the training. And so when you register for the training, LinkedIn can remind you, but also push the word out to the rest of industry that, hey, I value this training. You might value this training as well. Let's go check out Neil's training together. And speaking of that, when you come to the training, don't come alone. Invite colleagues. I've got people who watch 3, 4, 5 people in a company are all watching it. And then they're able to go away and talk about whatever that tip is. I was suggesting, like even today, the budget, I can guarantee you there's people going to take it away and look at their target agency. Last thing I'll say before I dive into the budget parts is tell me what your target agency is. I'm curious, and especially if you're struggling to get agency budgets, let me know. But right now, just tell me which agency you're trying to get into. I'm curious after this training if my team and I can go in and find some of those budgets that are out there. Generally, you can find the budgets on an agency's website, which is a pretty easy thing to find. Okay. I'm going to go back and forth between looking at the slides and going into an agency budget. Today, I'm going to use the Department of Commerce. So it's a big it's a big department. And then under it, it's got agencies. And that's typical of large departments like HHS or Department of Army, et cetera. They all have subordinate commands, subordinate agencies, components. And so I'm going to go into the Department of Commerce as an example, and then a deeper dive into one of the bureaus within Commerce called Bureau of Economic Analysis. And I'll show you that in a minute. And so in here, I'm going to go back and forth. But first, I just want to talk about some of the things you can see when you go into an agency budget, right? The first thing I'm able to do is to begin to look at how all the subordinate offices fit together to make a department level budget. So when I talk about the Bureau of Economic Analysis being part of Commerce, well, there's multiple other agencies. And so I'll show you that in a second. I'm also able to look in and see what they talk about from a dollar standpoint. How much money are they spending? And I can begin to align that to what I might see on USA spending to see how much of it is contract dollars and how much of those dollars are in the services and product area that I sell, right? So the same thing for you. Org charts are really great. So sometimes I can go into agencies and I can see how they're describing the tier 2, tier 3 levels of their organization. And so you can see it in different ways. But one of the ways you see it is by offices. Another way, which is really important in an agency, is top programs. And so this fourth bullet talks about when you go into an agency budget, you can see some of their most important programs where they're spending the most amount of money. And the reason, or the way you can tell it's a very important program to them, is it's in their budget. They don't list out everything. They're just listing out the top, let's say 20 to 50 at most programs that are in there. And when you see those, you can begin to go, well, how can I help with those? Because those clearly are the biggest importance. FTEs is a huge thing I like. I'm going to try to show you that, but full-time equivalent is what I call it. They call it employees or staffing. But the idea is I can go in and I can learn about an agency or a program office within an agency by seeing how they're staffed up. Last year, we were staffed up with 6 people, we're going to 8. Or we were at 500 people, we're going to 600, right? Or down, right? And so by looking at an agency and the employee account, I can begin to understand that. And I'll show you that FTE count both in BAE, and then I'll also show you as it relates to money if I lined it up correctly. And then coming down to the bottom here, communication channels, I'll show you what I mean. But basically, the reason I like this is sometimes you go to an agency website and you really can't find much. But if you go to their budget document, which is hundreds of pages, then you're able to look in and sometimes see where they're saying, this is how we communicate the most important things to us. This is how we communicate to industry, or this is how we communicate to our federal government partners, so sister agencies, et cetera. So I'll show you examples of that. That's really good because it encourages us, me certainly, to look at that and go, ooh, how do I get a copy of that document that you're putting something in? Because when we want to learn in business development and capture about a customer's pain points or their goals, well, if I can go somewhere where they're writing down literally, oh, this is a pain, but here's my goal, right? Then that really helps. And the last 2 bullets, right, is accomplishments and priorities and goals. And so these kind of go together. Accomplishments were what we did last year in the last fiscal year. So an example is when I show you BAE's budget. If BAE's budget is 2024, which still hasn't been passed, right? And it was written in 2023. And so when they're talking about the accomplishments, they're talking about FY 2022. But don't worry about that. If you're new to the government space, you can go back 4 or 5 years and that's still new. I mean, that's still in play. Often I share strategic plans and somebody will say, it's 2, 3, 4 years old. It's like, that doesn't matter. In the government, they don't move in days or weeks or even months. They move in birthdays is what we say, annually. Their step forwards are annual or yearly step forwards. And so accomplishments looks at those, and priorities and goals touches on what they want to get done. There's another document, a strategic plan that goes with a budget that really lays out the strategy and the goals, but inside of an agency budget, you can learn about those. Okay, so those are key parts. Let me go to each one of these and start showing you what I mean. So I'm going to go back and forth between this slide and the budget. So here, I'm going to start, not there, I'm going to start here. So I'm going to start on the Department of Commerce thing, but the reason I highlighted this is I love this. When I first clicked on this to bring it up to use for today's example, I'm like, I don't want a budget and brief. And then I saw it was 200 pages of briefly telling you about their budget. I was like, okay, that's more than enough. Imagine what the real budget is like if this brief is 200 pages. Okay, so the first thing I said was, I think, table of contents and page 10. So I'm going to go down here to table of contents. And right here, this is the only part I want to show you. And I don't need to dive too far in. I'll do it in a second. But right here, you can see Bureau of Descriptions. And that first start is where I can begin to get this understanding of the breakdown or organization, not an org chart, but the breakdown or organization of a department. And I can begin to look in and go, oh, this is who they got. So let me zoom in for a second. And I can see that some of the most important things that they put in here is right here, departmental management. This is an entire office. And I think I might go to it at different levels, but this is an entire office that is focused on running the department. If you're in the administrative support services or business services, this is certainly a department I would want to be looking at, right? And ironically, by the way, this is one of the customers I'm trying to support, or one of my customers is trying to go in here. So this is so perfect for me because I'm not just teaching you, I'm teaching them what we do to help them. So when I come down, I'm able to look in here and start seeing, okay, there's census, there's Bureau of Economic Analysis, who I talked about. Let's say we're in here. Well, where can we expand in this department? I start getting a good understanding. And this is one level of looking at it. When we talk about money, you'll see another way of looking at it. And like, do I want to go into each one of these bureaus or offices or subordinate commands? Do I want to go into each one? Well, looking at the budget will give me insight to be able to make those decisions. We call them data-driven decisions, right? This is the data that will drive some of your sales decisions you're trying to make. Okay, and so let me go to, let me pop this back to the page level, go to page 10, if I got my stuff going good. So here, I just wanted to come in really quick, and let me go back, page 10. Okay, so I just wanted to come back and say, look, one agency, we're coming down, and let me show you a couple of things that are just super helpful in here, right? The first thing is I can just start seeing what they do, some of their missions, et cetera, and I'm gonna go pretty fast. I'm not trying to say everywhere. But as I start looking down, I can see some of the priorities that they have. There was one area I thought I had highlighted. Oh, but right here, for example, I can start seeing that they've got activity they're trying to do for technology modernization, et cetera. Risk mitigation, I guess I have a customer that does that. I have a customer that does zero trust, which is kind of separate but related. And so all these type of things, it allows me to begin to understand what they have in here. And then as I go down into this organization, I'm going to make sure I go pretty fast on this because I got a lot to share. But in here, when I get down into the department, what's this called? Department of Education or departmental management is the office, right? And I can start looking in here. And one of the things I'm looking for is these increases and decreases. And so if I look around at, look at these positions. In 22, it was 200 people and then they grew and then they're growing 30 more people. That's a good sign for me. I can look at the budget and say, okay, the budget, there's an increase of people by that. There's an increase of budget in here. This one here, reimbursable, they're going to drop that by 5 people. As you begin to look at this stuff, you can begin to start getting an understanding of where they're at. This is a small amount. Imagine if the numbers of people are thousands, right? You can learn a ton. Let me back up and come back to my thing. So then I want to jump down and show you how, so I'm at the departmental level, Department of Commerce. That's how I can look at the agencies. And now if I look at the spending, I'm going to see dollars and I'm going to see agencies again in that way. So let me go to 183 here. So I'm coming down here and this is budget authority, but what I like about it is I'm able to look at the last 2 years plus this current year that we're a quarter plus the way into it. But one of the things I really like is I can see all the agencies just like I did above, but now I'm seeing all the money lined up. And so if I zoom in, one of the things that I noticed as I'm looking at this data is I can see like there's $881 billion drop, but where's that dropping? And so it's really interesting to see like right here, NOAA is dropping down by 226 million. Why, right? And I can go into the NOAA budget and begin to look, where's that money coming out of? Maybe it's no big deal because they might have had a big lift and then they dropped it, but it looks like their budget was fairly steady around 7 billion and then boom, it's starting to drop. So I want to go into the NOAA budget and look, but this is also an immediate flag to me that says, hey, maybe I shouldn't go into NOAA as fast as maybe Bureau of Census. Why are they going up 121 million, right? So that kind of information that you can get about the spending allows you to look at a department and go, well, which agencies might I prioritize? You definitely want to go further into each agency to see where that spending is related to what you sell. This last one I want to do right here where you see it's 879 million decrease in what they were spending. That's no big deal because if you look at 2022, it was 589, now it's 800, and they must have done something last year that was just this massive spend and came down, right? It could have been one of the initiatives the administration does, et cetera. When you look into the individual budget, you'll figure that out. Okay, just keep it on my time. So that was the department level. And so now I want to go into the agency and start walking you through these parts. And so page 4 is the org chart. And then I'm going to page 16 for the top programs, just reminding myself. So here's the Bureau of Economic Analysis. This is an agency within the Department of Commerce. When I come in here, I can start digging down. It's hilarious. I already forgot. Page 4 and page 16. Got it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, and I cruise through all these pages, right? That's how I know what number to go through. But if I go to 4, one of the things I like about it, not just an org chart, right? There's no people, so that's not overly helpful. But what is really helpful to me is this ability to look at it and begin to decide, do I want to be working, if this is BAE, do I want to be working in the regional products division right here in the third column? Is that something I want to do? To me, this is business development. I'm looking at an agency, I'm beginning to analyze its subordinate offices and deciding which ones are the right fit for me, right? This chief administration officer, maybe that's a fit for me. If I'm in IT, I certainly want to talk to the information officer and the innovation officer. And if I can find a data person, I'm going to talk to them too, right? If I'm in the IT space. And so I like org charts like this because it instantly tells me, make a determine yes or no on whether we're going to be able to go after this particular office. And the other way I'm able to determine that, by the way, this is not a one-day task. I'm trying to get millions and millions and millions of dollars from them over multiple years. I can spend a few days really understanding how much money is being spent in each office, et cetera. I think the next page I said was 16, and this is the programs. And this is just an example. Let me go wide here. This is just an example of when you're coming through this particular agency's budget, the way they lay out their programs, and every agency does it a little different. But the way they lay it out, I can see that their program name is basically like this. They call it an activity from what I'm looking at in the budget, right? And I go down and I can see what they're trying to do. What is the goal of this program? And then pop a little more. Here I can see their operating objectives. What are they trying to get done, right? I can look at this stuff and see, does it fit to what I do? And then let me come a little further. So here I can look and see that for this program, they had this many people in 22, 23, and 24. So it looks like everything's going to be even Steven. They don't seem to be doing a lot of news spending. So I want to look in there and go, is that something I can do or not do? And let me back up 1 second. So if I just page down, you'll see every couple of pages, it's activity, and I can begin to see more program officers. There's another activity. There's another activity, right? And so as I go down, it'll explain it out in different ways. I'm not going to do that all here, but you want to look for that. So that was org charts in an agency budget. Here's top programs. I want to go to FTEs, right? And so let me try this, 31 and 54. So actually, I'll just do page 31 for FTEs. I really want to show that. So if I go to page 31, this is where I can start seeing some of the activity they have and the people who are in here. So let me just zoom in. I can see right here, for example, and by the way, this is just an introduction to a budget. You need to download your own agency budget and begin to explore it. But right here, I can begin to see how many people are they talking. There's not much change there. I can see some of the other activity they're doing. But as I come down through here, I'm able to really begin to understand even like something as simple as travel and satellite account. I can begin to see some of the spending and the people, and this gives me insight. One of the challenges the government buyer has with us in the industry is that we show up at a meeting and we're asking them all these questions that could be answered online, compared to if you show up and you say, hey, I was looking at the budget. I see that you guys spend about $1.5 billion. You got 5 people, whatever, right? They're instantly going to sit there and have a different way of looking at you, and they're going to appreciate you did your homework. Things like the agency budget make it so much easier for you. So I talked about communication channels. How do they communicate their message, what they're doing? That's on page 54 here. Let me show you what I mean. So on page 54, I hadn't actually seen this before. I really like this. Now it makes me want to go look at other budgets and see if I've just been missing it. But here it's periodicals, pamphlets, and audiovisual products that they put out. And it talks about their central mission is to do something. And here they're trying to disseminate BEA information out there, right? That's the gist of it. And so they talk about they've got a survey of current businesses, whatever that is, right? Each one of these things, and I'm not going to go through a lot of them, but each one of these that I find in this section, I would want to go see if I can't get a copy of them. I subscribe to a ton in DoD, like the Army Acquisition such and such magazine comes out every 2 months. When I get it, it's like 150 pages of the government telling me exactly what's going on in the background. If you want inside information, just listen to what the government is putting out. You'll get that inside information from the very insider, right? And so here, I'm able to see there's 54 periodical whatever products, right? If you worked for me, I would tell you I want to see all 54 or a reason why we're not getting one of the 54. For example, hey, that product is only available for internal government people. All right, we can't have that one, but guarantee we can get 3, 4, or 10 or 20. So, all right, let me pull that back, get to the slides again. So accomplishments and priority goals, 60 and 62. Let me kind of wrap those two up. So page 60, and we're cruising down on a 64 document, right? So here, if you see me zoom in, this is where they're just laying out annual performance plan and report. They have a whole nother document that they write this. And so here they're just doing a summary in these budget documents, but I'm able to look in. And the cool thing is if I start reading down, I can see some of the things they put in place, not just what have they accomplished, but I'm able to grab what tools did they put in place so that I now know they exist. It's not just about the accomplishment, but it gives me insight into what we call situational questions. A situational question is just factual. And so an example is you don't want to ask your customer too many situational questions, especially the ones you can do research on. And so if you look through here, you're able to find it. If you look in some of the things they're talking about what they did, but if I come down to 64, one of the last things I'll show you on this BEA one is that I can come in here and look at what they're planning out, right? Here is key strategies for strategic objective 4.2. I'm going to go, well, where's 4.2, right? Let me go back to that document. Let me link them together. But I can start seeing what they're doing in here, what they're tracking on. One of the things that I didn't put in here, and I'm assuming it's not on the next slide. Yeah. One of the things I didn't put in here, but and so I don't know where it is to show you, but in here, I can see how many people they're trying to hire. We're at 30 people. We want to go to 54 people. Well, I work with a company that does staffing, and they have contracts that are with the government sometimes to help them do recruiting. Well, that ability to see how many people they're trying to hire is really good because you're able to come back and say, well, how are you doing that? How can we help? But if you don't even know they're hiring, but you do staffing, then you're at a disadvantage over your competitors. Okay, so let me move on to a couple of top tips for searching agency budgets. And I'm going to go through these really fast because I only got 5 minutes left. And I got 2 more slides I want to show you. But you can browse the table of contents like I showed you. So looking for things that you like. You can review those programs, trying to find things that match your products and services, right? And the last thing is you can look at those priorities. And so I've showed you each of these already. But when you read those, you begin to find areas where your company matches up. I wanted to use a couple of examples here just on the searching for BAE. So if I do, let me just do EEO as an example. So EEO is equal opportunity employer. And it's funny. Hey, it's not working. Why aren't you working? Can't be over there. Well, sometimes it doesn't work when I want to do the searching. Let me do the data analytics one. Analytics. So when I come into, all right, I got to stop. My searching is not working and I don't want to use up my time. The point is when I searched for EEO, I was finding like 3 things and they really led in. One of the things I found on EEO is they just stood up a new diversity office. If I'm EEO, that's awesome for me. I can go in and go, well, how are you moving forward? What are you doing when there's a surge of complaints because you finally have an office? Any of that kind of activity. Data analytics, I searched and I found 1 and it really highlighted the importance of what they were trying to do. And so I can dive in. Working with a customer doing water as an example. In Commerce has NOAA, and inside of NOAA, it talks about one of the things I liked is it highlighted a challenge that Department of Commerce, so its subordinate agencies, has around water and making sure the water quality across the country is, maybe the world, is squared away. The point is now I can find that, go align it to the challenges they're talking about. When I go in to have meetings about water, I'm able to reference it, which is this last slide. This last slide, I just want to talk to you about how to use budget information with federal agency customers when you're going in. So a government contractor goes in, they're talking to an agency buyer. You want to sit there and talk more than just, hey, here's our capability briefing. Let me tell you everything we do. So you can use an agency budget to identify program offices that allow you to then follow that money to the office that's managing it and then the people. So that's one great path. You can also use the agency budget as a way to start relationships. If you're reaching out cold, you can reference something that's in the budget. Hey, I saw this thing about water, for example, in the budget. I was wondering if you had 10, 15 minutes to talk about it so I can ask you a couple of questions, right? Whatever you do to get in the door. But if you reference it, now you're not just saying, hey, can I have an intro call for no other reason than I just want to get in. If you reference something, it warms that cold email or outreach up a little bit. In call plans, I teach when you do outreach and you're having a meeting, you have a call plan and you write questions down to guide your meeting. Well, when you have an understanding of the agency budget, you can fit in some of what you've learned into those questions so you can ask more questions. I noticed you guys are going from 30 to 54 people. How are you doing that? Like, are you doing it in one day? Or you're trying to get them all hired right away? Or that's over the next entire year? And then the last thing about the agency budget is when you read the agency budget and you put it into your call plan and you're talking about the agency budget in your first call when you're trying to schedule a meeting or in the meetings that you actually have. And when you're referencing that budget, you're shifting the authority from, hey, I'm some subordinate vendor that's out here and I just want to get in and that other person's making me feel lucky to be there, to more of an equal conversation. 2, when you shift it even more and you're talking about the budget across the entire department and they only work in an agency, you begin to shift that authority a little bit where they're letting you drive the meeting. You're not in control, right? But you're shifting the authority so they look to you and say, wow, this is a squared away person coming in to meet with me. It's a way you change from being a vendor to your agency, your target agency, to being a strategic partner. I care about the long term. I'm not here just about the short-term dollar gain. So here's what I want you to remember from today's training. The first thing is make sure you go find your agency's target budget. If you haven't done so already, put in the chat what your target agency is. I'd just love to see that. But find your agency's budget and then spend a few hours, get a coffee, get a lunch, whatever, and read that budget and see where your company fits in to that agency, what they're trying to do, and most importantly, what they plan on spending money on. And the last thing is just reach out to one of your customers, anybody, a new person or existing customer, relationship even, just reach out and ask them a question related to the budget that you just looked at. See if you can get them talking about it. Start practicing having conversations related to what's important to the government, in this case, the budget. Hey, if you're interested in getting my team's help supporting you growing to the next level, love to talk to you about it. We usually help customers $1 million plus already so that they've got some traction. But just go to govconchamber.com/workshop to learn more. And for all of us, as you're pursuing through those agency budgets, just remember, government contracting is not a secret. It's just a secret. Oh my gosh. I almost said government contracting is not a budget. It is not a secret. It's just a process. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next training.